Most folks are going to tick something like this advanced grid, which this is what I had on the main screen, which is showing me kind of a drill down sort of view. You'll run the builder, and you'll kind of see that Bezl builders have, as opposed to just click a one-click install thing, it's a bit more of a wizard-based process when you're talking about a builder. And they all operate very similar, but just with, depending if you're building a chart versus a grid, you might have to ask you some different questions. So you're going to start off by giving it a name. So I'm going to come up here. Let's call it Bezlio Webinar 221. Typically, you give this a kind of a real name, defining exactly what this thing is. So in this case, I'm going to do a sales by territory. So typically, that's what you would name it. I'm just giving kind of a unique name here. Next, you're going to say where you're connecting to. So this is defining the connection that this bezel is wired up to. And the process of defining a connection is first you pick from this drop down here to say what server is serving up the data. You could have multiple Bezlio remote data brokers out there wired up to your users. So for example, let's say you were a big, a big enterprise, and you had lots of subsidiary organizations, and each of those were not wired up where they were all centralized into a single, network. This drop-down might point to the various different entities right here, and that's part of how you can pull all your data from lots of different companies all together into a single spot. Next, you can pick the resource that's on that server. Resources are a very flexible concept in Bezlio. You define them on that server within Bezlio Remote Data Broker. So you can define them very narrowly, if you like, where it might be customers, for example. There'd be a list of customers, or it could be more of a, fill in the blanks of what you want your users to get to. So again, very flexible. When you set up a resource, just think about, you're basically saying what questions I want to ask the end users to get to the, the ultimate data. Now, when I say end users, I'll also stipulate that there's two different classes of users when it comes to Bezlio. You can be somebody that might be a power user or an administrator who can get into this sort of thing, or you might also choose to lock your users out of this. So those users would never see this part. So, it's definitely up to you how tight you want to make that based off of your security. I've got mine fairly wide open here where I've got some very broad resources defined. So for example, if I select Excel, it lets me fill in a full path through an Excel file here to get to that data. If I was using Excel, for example, just keep in mind that the Excel file, this is the Excel path within your private network. So this is doesn't have to be on your PC. You don't have to be VPN'd in to see that Excel file. It just has to be Bezlio Remote Data Broker can see that Excel file within that network. Same deal, I've got a SQL Server. The SQL Server one has a different set of questions here, and we'll kind of walk through this one specifically. So with this one, I'm going to start off, I'm going to say it needs me to know, what am I doing with SQL Server? Well, I'm running a query. Next saying, okay, where's the query at that you want to run? Because I've enabled this to be asked here. The way we do this security for the SQL Server plugin is we define folders full of .sql files, and you assign permissions to those folders based off the user. So go back here, I'll just show you, this is what our folder structure looks like. Make a bit of a mess out here, but we've got a lot of different folders, and within each of those folders, I've just got the query files that I've dropped out here to be able to run. So this is how you kind of isolate down exactly what somebody can do. You're not giving somebody a blank check to get in and just do whatever they want. You have to say, no, I'm letting you see customers, I'm letting you see parts or whatever by the fact that you just dropped those into this folder. So I'm going to pick, you can label those folders whatever you like in Bezl Remote Data Broker, so I've labeled that one. It's called Sales Rep Queries. Next, I'm enabling it to let me pick which connection I'm pointing to. These are all the databases I'm allowed to use as this user. So I'm going to select production. Note here that I'm not saying username, password, IP address, any of that sort of stuff. That's all defined on the server side. So I'm just the user saying which one I'm picking. Then last, I'm going to pick which query I want to run. This is that same list of queries that were in that folder. That's what I'm seeing here. Now you can have, just like in Crystal, how you can have parameters for a report, you can have parameters on queries for SQL Server. and that's defined here. So if you wanted to ask the user for date range or a customer ID or something like that, you can fill those in right here. I'm not going to do that in this case. So I'm going to hit next. That's going to run that query, and it's going to bring me into the designer now for advanced grid. So this is the part of the wizard that would change based off of what you're doing. If I was building a pie chart right now, this would be designing a pie chart. But since I'm doing a grid, it's more of a drag and drop based interface in here for laying out what I want this grid to look like. So I'm going to throw a few columns on here, and you'll see as you're doing this, it's building out a live preview down along the bottom. And as I'm building that preview, there might be things I want to tweak, like I don't like the column heading, I don't like the formatting. If you want to tweak something, just hit the little drop down up here, and you can change things like the caption or the formatting. And you can see that all reflected in real time down here. Advanced Grid, the real virtue to it is that you can have an unlimited number of groupings with it. So, I only want to group by territory. And maybe I want to throw that same 120 plus column up here. And I want to do that same sort of, change the caption, put in the currency, but I also want to say I want to sum it up since it's the group level now. And maybe I want to make this territory column wider. You can see it's fairly straightforward. This is not something you have to do as a developer necessarily. This is a kind of a power user sort of functionality to do this sort of stuff. The administrator stuff would actually be probably defining the queries up top, getting those put out in the folder in the first place. So you do kind of have a ability for a little bit of self-service in here if you are inclined to open this up to your users. As you're looking at the data, you can kind of expand out to see some of the data inside and kind of play with it while you're down here. You also have a chance within here to do some default sorting. So you click on column headers, that's applying a sort. And you can have different sorting at every level. So maybe at the first level, I'm going by alphabetically on territory. Then as I drill down, then I'm seeing it sorting by the currency amount, or the 120 plus column. So when you're satisfied with the wizard here, you hit create. That puts it on the bottom in this list called My Bezels. So this is whether you installed from Gallery or used a Bezl builder to create your own, it puts it on this list here. And then it's a matter of just adding it to a panel somewhere. You could add this to an existing panel, or you could create a brand new panel right now. So I'm going to call this one more thing, webinar 212. Hit create. I guess the 21st, not the 12th. So after you create a panel, what will happen is it'll actually go through and did I already have this one from before? So it actually creates a brand new panel for us, and it puts on that panel a default bezel. So I can take and drag this out, make it the size I want. I can come in here and say select, pick from the list. And then you'll see this is sort of more what your end users would actually interact with. So same deal, same ability to kind of get in and do all the same sort of drill downs, interactivity, all that sort of stuff. Because I did already have that one. So and you've kind of got it all right here available for you.